It is Monday, October 30th, 2023. This is another edition of Football Today. You know that, dude. It's Bobby Skinner from Talking Giants. I am Chris Rose, producer Mikey, along for the ride as well. You know, Bobby, I don't know you super well, right? We've been doing this show now a couple months, and this is the most we've talked. Not like we don't, dislike each other. It's just we haven't spent a lot of time. But I get the feeling that Halloween's not the biggest time for you. Is that accurate?
No, I don't. I don't celebrate Halloween.
Okay. All right. But you can appreciate it. Did you see the little kid on social media doing the McDaniel? Where, I mean, it is just dead on, where he does the whole runoff and everything. He's got the headset, he's got the sweatsuit on the side and everything. It's, look at this kid. Huh?
Oh, that didn't even click with me that was a Halloween thing. I just thought that was just a kid just dressing up like Mike McDaniel for fun.
No, I think my guess is that I would think that's a Halloween thing. I could be wrong. Not, can you at least give me a thumbs up on it?
Oh yeah, it was a good. I mean, that was the best part of Sunday Night Football was them pointing that out, right? Like that was. Has there ever been a Sunday Night Football game you were less invested in like the last 10 years?
Dude, if that had been like the number 6 game on the Fox schedule, you wouldn't have been shocked.
It's like the most like above. It's like just a slightly above average team versus the worst team in the NFL. One of the worst teams in the NFL with the backup QB.
Yeah,
as boring as it could be.
No. All right, let's start with a big game where the Bengals, boy, they continue to make some moves and climb up the ladder, and they look like they're feeling good. And Joe Burrow was absolutely fantastic, 28-32. The other side of the narrative was that the Niners have now lost 3 straight. Meanwhile, the Seahawks, they scored a game winner with less than a minute to go to beat my Browns. So if you haven't checked the standings, Seattle is 5-2. The Niners are a half game back at 5-3 in the NFC West. Is this truly a divisional race?
It is the divisional race. I do think the 49ers still end up winning it. So my takeaway out of watching these two games, I have lots of takeaways, right? Because it's like the Browns continue to frustrate me. I couldn't imagine being a fan of that team because it's just I guess they're 2-1 their last 3 games, but they should have won that game. You have the ball that gets popped up for an interception at the end of the game. I did not watch the 49ers Bengals game live because I was doing Giants stuff. But I did see the discourse around Brock Purdy after the game, right? And I'm thinking, oh boy, Brock Purdy had a stinker. I watched this game this morning. I can't believe, like, Brock Purdy made amazing plays. I mean, he had 356 yards, over 11 yards per attempt. He was on his game, but he did have 2 bad plays, right? The first interception, I think, is more of a fluke than anything, right? I'm not going to come away from him on that. The second one, again, on that dig route. Like, they got to figure that out because teams are trying to bait them into that. But he made throws across his body, like big play after big play, like throws to Ayuk. Ayuk even had a couple drops on big plays in this game. Like, if people are taking victory laps on their I told you so's about Brock Purdy after this game, then you need to have I told you so's on Josh Allen and stuff. Because this was, to me, I thought he played awesome, minus the 1 interception on the dig play and then a little bit of a fluky one-handed catch by a linebacker.
Yeah, so once again, the bigger question is it truly a divisional race? I did call the Browns-Seahawks game for the Browns radio network. Seattle is a weird team, man. I think defensively, they're really good. They're really good. They can stop the run. I think their secondary is awesome. That kid, Devin Witherspoon, is just nasty. And here he is, less than 8 games into an NFL career. Offensively, I don't get him. I just don't get him. Like the top 3 receivers they got out there between DK, Lockett, and Smith and Jigba, to me, it feels like that's like a top 3 receiving unit right there. They've got some talented tight ends, but Geno, man, there's times during the game where I thought he was Jets Geno again. I was like, this is a weird. So I don't know. I think they're going to start losing some of these games. Like they lost to the Bengals on the road when they had the ball 4 times inside the 20 and scored like 3 or 7 points. Then against Arizona, they just couldn't pull away from them. They had to score with less than a minute to go to beat a Browns team that's starting a quarterback who really doesn't have much business starting at this level. So I don't feel like they're going to be able to hang with the Niners, but the Niners season will come down to a stretch in early December where they play Seattle twice in a 3-week span, and the meat part of that schedule sandwich is at Philly. That's going to decide it right there.
Yeah, and I think they are the better team than Seattle and probably would beat them in those two games. So it is a divisional race though, right? Because if Seattle just like splits with them, they're right there in it. And, we've seen the 49ers kind of fall into, I mean, they're what, 3-game losing streak now. But I do think they end up winning it. But hey, it has to be a race. The Seahawks are in first place and we're halfway through the season.
But here's the thing. There was no more impressive team on opening weekend than the Niners, who went into Pittsburgh. It's one thing to beat Pittsburgh. It's another thing to beat up Pittsburgh. That doesn't happen to Mike Tomlin teams. And you're like, oh my God, not only are the Niners good, they're so tough and physical. The last 3 weeks, they've had it handed to them a little bit physically. And I know there's no Debo. That is a big, big difference maker, because even if he touched it like 6 times a game, it felt like those 6 plays were so heavy-handed that the Niners are hitting you with a sledgehammer every time he does something offensively. And they've obviously missed Trent Williams. And I just didn't expect the Niners to be out-bullied in 3 straight games.
Well, yeah, even more so the Trent Williams and Debo Samuel to me. Like, he's the best left tackle in the game. You have weapons on offense like Ayuk, Kittle and McCaffrey in the receiving end. So you can get by without him. But you're starting Jalen Moore, a 5th-round pick, who was actually one of my draft crushes, but I thought he could move to guard. Loved him at the Senior Bowl. Held up halfway decent. Trent Williams not being out there is huge, but they didn't run the ball, right? Or run it very well.
Purdy was their leading rusher.
Yeah, Purdy's their leading rusher while also having 360 passing yards. They only handed it to McCaffrey 6 times in the second half, when in reality, that was the weakness of the Bengals defense, was their run defense. And the game wasn't out of hand until the second half of the fourth quarter. You could have stayed committed to the run game. Instead, they kind of got pass happy. And I mean, Purdy was playing. He obviously doesn't have the arm talent, but his playing style yesterday was like that of Brett Favre, where it's like everything was down the field, throwing across his body, making tight throws, and then also had the interception on the dig route. So I think they'll be fine, even though they're on I've never been as confident in a team that's on a 3-game losing stretch as I am the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I just, I don't know, maybe I've just watched too much Niners football over the years with Kyle Shanahan at the helm. I just believe in him. I think.
Yeah, I mean, they dog walked the Cowboys, right? Who that would be like their big playoff test before the conference championship, and then it's a question of how do they fare against the Eagles, right? Yep. And we will see that regular season game. So it's like, to me, it's still a question of, are they number 1 or number 2 in the NFC?
All right, Vikings, they won their 3rd game in a row to get back to 500, which is good for them. But offsetting that win is the loss of their quarterback, Kirk Cousins. As of the taping this show, it's not official yet, but everybody is fearing torn Achilles and done for the year. What does that mean for this team moving forward? I want you to listen to one of his offensive linemen, Christian Darrisaw.
It means everything. That's our leader. The guys is just who you want to be your quarterback, and just to see something happen to him, it kind of just hurts a little bit. It takes it away from his win, maybe a little bit, but we're praying for Kirk, and we're in good spirits.
All right, so there's a few things I want to get to. The first thing, he's going to be done. Do you go trade for somebody? Do you pull somebody off the street that can help you maybe eke into the playoffs as a 5, 6, 7 seed? Do you do that?
The Vikings?
Yeah.
Who are they going to trade for?
So Ryan
Tannehill?
No, Ryan Tannehill comes to mind. Some people were joking around saying, hey, Kyler Murray, there he is.
No, I mean, I think the Vikings, obviously they don't want him to get hurt, but they were trying to lose this year, right? Everything they did in the offseason was to lose. They didn't move any of Kirk Cousins' money because they're trying to move off Kirk Cousins. Mm-hmm. Like, the front office, which I do not agree with tanking. Like, show me a team that's actively tanked and, gotten better. You could say the Dolphins, but it's not because of their tanking. They mishandled the draft for 2 years. They kind of get what they want. Right. Obviously, you don't want Kirk Cousins injured, but they're going to lose games, and their draft pick is going to get higher and higher every single week. Because who's their backup?
Hall, kid out of BYU.
Yeah, they're not going to win games for the rest of the year. They'll win 1 or 2. Well, they were staying alive because of Kirk Cousins.
Yes, but they are. Let's say they win 2 more. 6 wins ain't going to get you maybe exactly who you want in the draft.
That's true. That's true, but they might not even. So they're at 4 wins now. Gosh, it's crazy how they turned it around. And again, it's thanks all to Kirk Cousins. There's a chance they win one more and get at 5 wins, or win none. And like I'm telling you, Hall is their quarterback. That they're not filled with talent to especially with Justin Jefferson injured. And a lot of what made Jordan Addison good is Kirk Cousins willing to be able to pull the trigger when he sees that he's won leverage, right? He's like a route runner. You got to have trust in that. I don't know if Hall's going to have the same type of trust or accuracy that Kirk Cousins has.
Yeah.
Like this will be a disaster for the rest of the season for Minnesota.
All right. Now it gets to the
Do you think they trade Hunter, by the way?
Well, when they were winning the game yesterday, I thought there was no way in hell because they were back to 500, and the NFC, with the way that Kirk's playing and with Justin Jefferson comes back, I thought they were good enough to kind of squeak into the playoffs. But now pass rushers are guys you can get picks for, right? An aging Von Miller, Denver got a 2 and a 3, I believe, for him from LA. Now I know that Von Miller's a different level, but Danielle Hunter's a really good player. We've talked about that.
He's younger
before.
too.
Yeah, and he's younger.
I don't understand. See, that's my thing with whole tanking. Like, unless you're getting 2 first-round picks for Danielle Hunter, why don't the Vikings re-sign him? Like, he's a good player to build around. Pass rushers are huge pieces. I don't understand why. Like, if they're trying to reset the quarterback contract window, you should be paying players like Danielle Hunter in that time frame. And if you want to trade him down the road and shit doesn't work out, he's going to be just as valuable.
I'll very clearly tell you why. Because he just turned 29 this past weekend.
Pass rushers have longer shelf lives.
I know they do. But then they become kind of spot guys in their 30s and stuff like that. I mean, I agree with you. 29 is not very old. But you know how some guys look at it, and maybe the analytics tell you, well, there's a significant amount of drop-off. You cannot pay guys a huge bonus and a 4-year deal if they're 29 or older. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but that's my guess is where that comes from, if I had to guess. But I do want to get to the bigger scope of the Kirk Cousins question, which is there have been so many different narratives surrounding his stay in Minnesota. Can't win in prime time. Can't win a playoff game except one. Gets paid a ton of money, but really, how good is he? If this is it for Kirk, and we both think that it is in the Twin Cities, how do you see him?
I see him as the best free agent quarterback since Kirk Cousins, right? Who have been free agent quarterbacks since then?
Since who?
Since Kirk Cousins.
Since him.
Because Kirk was after Peyton.
Right.
Like, again, I think he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Maybe not top 10 because there's a lot of good QBs right now. But he's like, I view him as slightly better than Dak Prescott. And Dak Prescott now he's older, so I don't see him getting a 5-year contract. But you better believe some team is going to throw $50 million per year at him this offseason.
I think most people look at Kirk Cousins and they think overrated for some reason. I don't quite get that. I mean, people forget he was a 4th-round pick.
He's underrated to me.
Yeah, by Washington, who used the 2nd pick of the draft to take RG3. And I remember, I don't know if you remember that draft day.
I do. My brother's a Commanders fan. I told him from day one, start Kirk Cousins. I was doing that to mess with him, but still.
I love it. Yeah, and people were like, why in the world would you take another quarterback after you just took a quarterback with a 2nd overall pick? I remember that old thing. And then he started playing once RG3 got injured, and people were like, okay, he doesn't suck. Like, he's not terrible. And then eventually the franchise tag back-to-back years, and then he became a free agent. We're like, oh, my God, he got all this money. He didn't win a ton of playoff games. He had the huge win down in the Dome, the walk-off, I think, in overtime down there.
Versus Saints, yeah.
Yeah. And
well, he's gotten better since that free agency,
that's the
right?
Thing.
Like
he has gotten better.
He's gotten way better, not way better, but he's gotten significantly better than that free agency market, right? Like where there was issues of him pulling the trigger on some stuff back in Washington. I remember him and Jay Gruden got in, like, just, Jay Gruden wanted him to just throw, and Kirk Cousins like, yeah, I'm going to throw 2-3 interceptions a game. And Jay Gruden said, but you're going to throw 400 yards per game. So he's gotten better. Now, obviously, he's had Justin Jefferson, the best receiver in the NFL, which makes it a lot easier to have confidence in a guy. But he's been consistently really good in the NFL.
I do think things have shifted a little bit, and I think the Netflix show Quarterback helped. I really do. I think people kind of see him in a different light. And I work with guys who were his teammates, and they all dig him. Like we think, my God, what a dork. That shit must not play at all in an NFL locker room. And I think it does. Like, you even saw him get on the cart yesterday. He was still engaged in the game. He was watching, he was clapping. I know everybody acts different, and some people put the side by side of him versus Rodgers, and Rodgers looking despondent, and the whole woe is me, I can't believe this shit happened. And Cousins is like, hey, what down is it? What are we doing? What's going on here? Like, fully engaged in the process. And I think that's what he is, man. He is the least me guy in the history of sports, possibly. Right? Everything from the way he takes care of himself to the way he dresses to his public persona. There isn't one thing. Like, he spoofs himself with the freaking chains. Good for him. Like, is it cheesy? Is it dad corny jokes? Yeah, but he's comfortable with who he is. And I think it's all right. I think he's done a good job.
Which is what locker rooms look for in a quarterback. Just be who you are and be genuine, right? Like, they don't need to be like, again, you can be the Peyton Manning type where it's, hey, like, I'm on top of you all the time, or you could be like the Eli, kind of laid back and goofy, but just be yourself. Don't try and give us all these raw speeches and yelling at people. Like, just be yourself, whether that's Joe Cool or whoever. Be yourself, because a locker room can see through someone being fake, and that's where issues go. So Kirk has just been himself.
Not to pick on a guy, but there's a dude in Denver who, I mean, if you went through and took a straw poll of the locker room, you'd be like, yeah, we're good. Right?
Yeah, despite the fact that they are victorious.
Speaking of which, Denver beats Kansas City. First time in 8 seasons. Congratulations. Way to get it done. Meanwhile, Jags, Dolphins, Ravens all win. That means the AFC standings at the top, 4 teams are tied at 6-2. Which of those 4 clubs are you most confident in?
I hate to say it because we've kind of pulled back from them. I think it's still the Chiefs, though, right? Because you have, at least they have Patrick Mahomes, right? And they have Travis Kelce, and they won a Super Bowl last year. They still have Chris Jones, who, was second in Defensive Player of the Year voting last year, and have shown that they, like, having the best quarterback means you're going to be in play for the Super Bowl, right? So I really do think it's still the Chiefs, despite the fact that I hope that they trade for some type of wide receiver in the next 24 hours.
I think I'm going to stick with Baltimore. I think there's just something about them. It wasn't a great game at all out in Arizona for them. Lamar certainly didn't light up the stat sheet. Odell Beckham had more helmet slams than catches yesterday.
Can we talk about that?
Yes.
I've been an Odell detractor since the Josina Anderson interview on ESPN in 2018. That was, like, he had all these incidents, and I was kind of like, okay, but he's balling. At that point, when you just threw your team under the bus, right? And then Thursday Night Football the following week, you leave for the locker room before halftime and force your coach to lie and say that you needed an IV. I've just been out, right? And now that he is not the same player that he was, that yesterday is such a horrible look from Odell Beckham Jr. that you get a defense. I understand you want to score a touchdown. I understand being frustrated, but to throw a temper tantrum after you drew a defensive pass interference, your team is up by 2 scores. You have 1st and goal at the 1-yard line. You're about to go 6-2, and you're throwing a temper tantrum on the sideline. Like, I would despise him if I was. I'm sure, obviously he has the credibility where he's going to be loved by some teammates, or even the majority. But there's no way that there is not people on that team that saw that and aren't, like, just disgusted with that type of stuff.
I don't agree with you. I agree with your premise. I don't agree with the reality. Odell Beckham Jr. is one of the few guys in sports that when he walks into a locker room, he's like an A-lister. And I'm not talking about a football A-lister. I'm talking about, like, A-lister. He is the guy that teammates are like, oh, my God, that's Odell. And there's not a lot of guys that are like that. And
that's
so
to a detriment sometimes, though.
I agree. I agree. I like in Cleveland, I think that's when it was Baker or
Me and
Odell. When it was Baker or Odell, and Odell's dad comes out with the tape. Now, to me, that's undercutting your quarterback. You heard almost nobody come to Baker's defense, and everybody's like, yeah, we'll welcome Odell back. You know, they sent him home. We'll welcome him back. Why is that? That's because it's the mentality of players who are like, Odell is the shit. We still know what he can do. And they're living in the past, Bobby.
And he's like literally a bad influence on younger players. I remember this happened because Odell started throwing Shermer under the bus right away after getting the big contract too. And you started seeing it leak into like a younger player at the time, Sterling Shepard, who Sterling Shepard's like the most team guy of all time, right? Like he's literally being kept on the Giants still because he's a team guy. And you saw him throwing temper tantrums and literally was like turning players against a brand new coach. And Pat Shermer, before they even got to the bye week of his first season, coming off of that contract extension after he played nice for an entire offseason to get that contract extension. So I don't think it moves the needle huge for the Baltimore Ravens. But to me, it's like, dude, you're not that guy anymore. You can't afford to be doing stuff like this. I mean, he's averaging like 30 yards per game.
He's got 14 catches this year in 6 games. He missed the game because of an injury. He's averaging 11.6 yards per catch. Has no touchdowns.
Yeah.
He's just a guy, man. Like, if you were to have a wide receiver draft, you can have anybody in the league. What number does he get taken? Top 30?
I mean, not in the top 50. Does he get taken in the top 50?
Wow.
I mean, he's closer to wide receiver 3 than he is wide receiver 1 on his own team. The difference between him and Zay Flowers is bigger than the difference between him and wide receiver 3.
Oh, yeah. I said that the minute that Zay Flowers walked into training camp. Everybody's like, oh, man, they got Odell, too. I was like, Zay Flowers, dude. That's the guy. It's over.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he's probably top 50. It's like when you go through the list, he ends up being there. But he's not a guy who should be paying $14 million per year like the Ravens did. That was always a bad contract and acting like that.
Boy, this got interesting, didn't it? Got very interesting. I like that.
Football season is in full swing, and we've teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to get you closer to the action. DraftKings is an official partner of the NFL, has an offer you don't want to miss. All customers can get a no-sweat bet on any same-game parlay or same-game parlay X. Ooh, X. All new customers who bet $5 will get $200 in bonus bets instantly. So download the DraftKings app now and use promo code FOOTBALL today. Fan of your alma mater and your hometown team? Combine multiple bets together for a shot at an even bigger payout. If you're already signed up for DraftKings like me, you can get a no-sweat bet on a same-game parlay / same-game parlay X bet if your bet does not hit. Max wagering limits do apply. Download the DraftKings app now. New customers use promo code FOOTBALL today. Bet just $5 on any wager and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code FOOTBALL today, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. You'll be glad you did.
Aaron Rodgers. Speaking of interesting guys, he was out on the field throwing and moving around, and then the Jets beat your Giants. Sorry about that. But New York is 4-3, the green one. When do you start to get interested in if Rodgers can really make a comeback this season?
Never. He's not coming back. There's no way. Unless he starts a practice, I will not be interested in this.
I mean, he was moving around a little bit. It wasn't just stationary tossing. Look at this. Look at this video. Look. Drop back, step through, fire it with the old Rodgers release. You're not even looking at the video, Bobby. You have zero interest in this?
I've seen the video. It's no, I don't. I mean, it's cool that he's doing that stuff, but he's going to do it every single week for the SNY Jets video.
Okay.
Are you?
No, but listen, I've soured on Rodgers a little bit. I've always found him interesting because I do appreciate people who are, think on their own and things like that. I do believe that he thinks he's the smartest person in the NFL. That's okay. And he might be. I mean, he's significantly smarter than I am. I know that for a fact. But yeah, I just, Cam Akers came back from the injury a couple of years ago.
But that was like there was like a 2-month difference in theirs, and that was like miraculous.
Yes, it was.
And that was like they got to the Super Bowl to be able to be that, right? So that's an extra, that's an extra month that the Jets are not going to have because they're not winning a playoff game without Aaron Rodgers.
Okay. By the way, that's one game that kept popping up on my red zone while I was up preparing for the Browns Seahawks game. I was like, why are they even showing us highlights of this game?
-9 yards passing for the Giants.
And it went to overtime?
Yeah, it was so ugly. We had a quarterback, Tommy DeVito, who was aggressively Italian. They didn't let him throw the ball at all. The second half, their run the pass ratio was 24-1.
Why do you have a guy like that on your roster then?
That's my question. Why is Matt Barkley, who knows the Brian Daboll offense, why wasn't he signed 3 weeks ago when you have injury-prone Tyrod Taylor as the guy starting for you?
Well,
I'm losing my mind on social media, which is it hasn't happened in a long time.
Yeah.
Because Daniel Jones was cleared before the game for contact, but they ruled him out. Like, why was he not QB2 in case of emergency? Which, hey, you had the emergency. Like, it's literally the difference between winning and losing if Daniel Jones is your QB2 in that game.
I can't get you off on this tangent, can I?
No, because I'm literally like
I'll lose you.
Yeah. Don't make me do it. It's not worth it. It's a 2-6 Giants team. No one gives a shit.
Okay, then let's move on to a happier world. Will Levis, he wowed the NFL world. 4 touchdown passes in his first ever NFL start. The Titans take care of Atlanta. Meanwhile, Bryce Young helped the Panthers get their first win of the season as the number 1 pick beat the number 2 overall pick, C.J. Stroud, and the Houston Texans. Is it possible that Will Levis ends up being the best quarterback out of this rookie crop?
It's 100% possible, right? And it's like it would be very funny if it was like he got the Josh Allen comparisons. It's like we can't compare every quarterback that has the big arm but not the great production to Josh Allen. If he ends up doing that, right? Because I mean, he was, and there was a couple incompletions down the field where he was just tossing it downfield. I think he had the longest average depth of target on the game. DeAndre Hopkins, turns out, guess what? He's not washed. He had 4 catches, 128 yards, and 3 touchdowns, just like, Randy Moss Thanksgiving stat line. Just was, putting some air on under these balls, and it's like, man, that's why people fell in love with this guy in the draft process, despite him not being a first rounder.
Yeah, it is possible, in part because he did, in my opinion, the impossible, which was make the Tennessee Titans watchable offensively. Like, they have been just such a grind on our eyes as football fans. It just feels like forever. Even when they were good, you're like, yuck. Can you just tell me the result of their playoff game? Do I really have to watch it? Because they just, unless Derrick Henry was throwing guys into row G, they weren't very interesting at all. And it feels like that's been the way. That's been their MO since they've ever been a franchise, to be honest with you. That's the way, we are a long way from Warren Moon back in the Houston Oilers days, sprinkling the field to every receiver ever when they were really fun. But I don't know. Here, you want to hear Mike Vrabel from this morning?
Yeah, I would love to.
Mike Vrabel says they'll probably be sticking with Levis as long as Tannehill is hurt.
I love head coaches.
And then he said, Vrabel had said last week, Tannehill was definitely the starter when healthy. Doesn't sound quite as definitive on that today following Levis's performance. But he also added, hypothetically, that Tannehill could be the starter again once healthy, but not making any determination on that as now.
They should have asked if he would still do a 2 QB system with Malik Willis. That's what they should have asked. Like, 2 QB system still on. Now, do Titans fans absolutely should be excited, right? Do you think them out of all teams have trauma from Marcus Mariota's debut? 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions versus Jameis Winston in the Bucs. There's something I've learned too, is like, don't overreact to a QB's first game. But he looked awesome. Like you said, like he looked like everything you would want Will Levis to be when you see his profile as a player. Just putting that trust in the arm, putting the ball. And for a guy like Will Levis, who does have some issues, and I'm sure some issues will arise within the season, to have that first game like that as a confidence builder, I think is huge for him.
As long as he's standing upright, nobody else should take a snap for the Titans this year.
Oh, yeah, it's not even a debate. And Mike Vrabel knows that, too, even though
he does.
Saying that that's not.
Do you think coaches, after they say that publicly, they get back to their office and they just start belly laughing because they know they're just so full of shit in front of a microphone?
Yes, I know that they do, because we were at the, our first time being media with like a press conference was joint practices. We just watched, and we told them we want to ask questions because we wanted to get credentials for that. And we talked to Dable afterwards, and I was like, yeah, I thought about asking you some bullshit question. He's like, yeah, I wouldn't have answered it anyway, and laughed. So yes, they absolutely know that. Like they laugh about it with the reporters, like, I'm not answering any of your questions.
So he knows you guys. I like that. I dig that.
Oh yeah, Dable knows us. We're at not to brag a little. We're at the point where it'd be surprising if they didn't know us.
That away. I love to hear that. Very, very good. Very, very good. All right, we got another fun-filled week coming up. Enjoy the Monday night game. What do we got? Raiders and Lions tonight?
Yeah, Giants Raiders next week. I'm gonna be scouting.
Okay. Good luck with that. We will see you later this week for our awesome producer Mikey and Bobby Skinner from the Talking Giants world. I am Chris Rose. Thanks for tuning in to Football Today.